Hi, welcome. And on this video I'm going to discuss the push and pull method. This is part of the application of method series. And to describe the push and pull method, what it is, its purpose is to create a more defined follower moment. It's to cut through the dog's decision-making process, cut through the dog's mind, okay, at a higher level. So it will grab and take hold of the mind. So through the physical part of it, you'll see as you're pushing and pulling, okay, the dog is going to grab hold of the mind, so the dog's head will turn in towards the owner, or the dog will be looking up at the owner, okay. So anyway, I'm just going to show this method, and again, just kind of explain it. It's one of the methods that's used in combination of other methods, such as the little, like the leash flexing, which you'll see in another video. It's kind of like I described the leash flexing. It's kind of like a little hey you. Again, it's not a correction. It's meant to target the dog's decision making, to grab hold of it, and to bring it in through, like a line coming in through, back out again. Okay, so the context is, I own everything. Okay, and it starts to have an impact. So here's the dog. Okay. And to describe the method, now the method is, again, when I use method, okay, I'm using just a straight flat collar on the dog. That's just so I can keep everything at kind of a steady, alignment, proper alignment between physical application of method and the mind and body connection, because it's just like two railroad cars going straight down the track. You don't want to disconnect at one level. I mean, the thing is, once the mind's becoming powerful, okay, and you apply physical force, it's an extension, okay, it's an extension of how you think, and it's coming through, say, a corrective collar, using a corrective collar on the dog. At this end, it could be too much, could overtake the mind, could trigger aggression, okay. If we're just starting the technique, so I'm not against certain things, like, because they follow the authoritative type of parenting style, but when I'm doing it, it's about doing it smart, so we don't, it's do it smart so that it's transitional, so that it's less challenging, okay? Don't get me wrong, you still have a high level of challenge, but it's less challenging. So to explain this technique, what this technique is it's incorporated within, if you're using and that's what you're working off of, is bringing your dog into the sit position. So you're pushing. So here what you're doing is basically there's a first push. Okay, you're gonna push. When you put the leash into the opposite hand. Okay, so that the dog stays on your left side. You want the left hand free and clear. So you'd be holding on to the leash on your right hand, and so now I can push, fully engage the dog on the side he's on or she's on. And so the first push. Okay, now when you're pushing, doing the push-pull method, or you're pushing on your dog's bum area, you want to push straight in. It's authority, no rubbing. Okay, if you're rubbing, it's emotion, it's nurture. You don't want to do that. Okay, this is meant to just bring physical force onto your dog. Okay, this is to create, target the dog's decision-making process. So the goal here is to change how you think, but it's to become the parent. So you're pushing. The first push is just to push your dog and your dog's bum to get them on the ground or floor area beside you. So technically, this is, creating somewhat of a moment, okay? It's bringing your dog under influence just to get them on the floor, okay, on the ground. So you're pushing to get them here. Now, once they're here, that's a good sign, okay? They're accepting authority, okay? At whatever point, you get your dog into the sit position. Again, you're not using commands. You're just pushing them into the sit position beside you. But you want to get them next to you. Okay, leave about a 2-inch gap. You want to leave a little airspace, so you don't want them leaning on you or touching you, because again, it affects psychology, changes how you think. You want to keep it clean. It has to be one that's tight, but you don't want touch, okay, involved. So the first push is to get them there, and then once they're there, what you'll do is apply right from the start of the starting gate, right from the initial. You want to practice this technique this way. So right from the first push, when the bum hits the floor, then you want to reach up. Now this is important. You don't want to rub your hand up the body, okay? You want to just remove the hand fully from the bum area, and then bring it straight down okay, and apply it to the top of the shoulder blade area. Okay, this is where this technique, so the hand, you still have the hand on the leash, okay, in one hand, and you're pushing down. Now, when you do this technique, you're like using basically the tips of your fingers a little bit, okay? You're cupping your hand over the dog, but your fingers are actually touching going into the fur area, stretching over, but they're going over the top of the dog, and they're coming down on, and there should be your dog should feel it. Okay, it's not meant to hurt the dog, a little bit of kind of a pressure point almost, but you're pushing your hand onto the dog on this area. So one hand is coming down here, okay, pushing, okay, while you're pulling up on the leash. Okay, so what's happening is dog is getting touched this way, and that's why it's called pushing and pulling, because you're pushing down with one hand and you're pulling up with the leash on the other. So what this does is it's cutting through the dog's decision-making process, okay, at a higher level here, okay? It's cutting through, it's tearing it. It's like going into a onion, so to speak, cutting in. So it's grabbing a hold of the mind at a higher level. So the dog is feeling it around through the collar, and the dog is feeling it coming on the upper back, okay? So it's meant to create, like I said before, more of a defined moment. It's meant to really cut through at that moment and for it to take a hold of this dog's decision-making process. So again, this is what you got, okay? As we're doing these moments, okay, it's grabbing hold and it's spilling over. It's really taking a hold of a good section of the dog's mind, okay? The dog knows it, okay, feels it. The dog's head will turn in, look up for you have 1 or 2 seconds, okay? And then what you do is once you do the push-pull method, you take a hold of mine, then you go back and just put the leash into the same side as the dog's on now, and you transfer the leash over, and now you'll go into the leash flexing, the little hey yous. But this technique here, the push-pull method, what you want to be saying in your mind as you do this, okay, repeating to yourself, quietly, whispering to yourself, I wouldn't recommend speaking at this point, but just telling yourself, I own, okay, because the mind and body are connected. The dog still senses where your psychology is through connection. They know, okay, this leash is just a connection point, okay, it's back and forth communication on the physical end, but the dog really does sense where your mind is at the same time. We want to make sure this is communication, this is one of clarity. So you want to make sure your mind is in that authority place. Okay, very, very important as you do this. But again, I'm going to work this out a little bit here and move some of this from this. There's some of this stuff. But again, push-pull method, it's used in conjunction with, again, other methods, but the push-pull method is also used, okay, when other people are approaching the dog. Okay, this is another part of using the method for dogs that are jumping up. Okay, so the push-pull method, okay, what it's used for is making sure that what you're doing is you're encircling, using this technique to encircle that other person, dog, or whatever it is. Okay, so what you're doing here is a push-pull technique at another, using it for a different type of way. Okay, for people, say, coming into the house, okay, through the doorways, is what you want to do is, now you have to set this up as a controlled exercise, but what you're doing is as people are entering the house, the dog is going to want to go by you or push you to the side, so to speak, and they want to surround, invade that area of that person, okay, and then that's when the jumping happens. Okay, this technique here, what it does is it brings the dog's mind under influence, okay, and what's communicating is you're putting that person who's coming into your home because they're a friend, okay, the dog, knows that, but this is establishing it. What I'm saying is, no, I'm putting that person temporarily on the hierarchy scale and path ahead of the dog. Okay, so what you're doing is, again, you're using the push-pull method, okay, here, and then down here, and what this does is, this impacts the decision-making process of your dog, okay, and what it does is, surrounds, it's saying, I'm communicating, saying, I own. So, but this technique, when you're applying it this way, so when someone's coming up to want to pet your dog, okay, this is where you have to kind of work this out, okay, as you're doing it, because as your dog, okay, as the person comes closer, okay, the dog is going to want to go over more, okay, it increases their level of authority in their mind, where as the person's walking closer to your dog, or say another dog is coming a little closer, on leash or whatever, this is where you have to increase the level of the pushing, okay, now, and the pulling. But here, this is important. This is where I tell dog owners that this is where you got to work this out so that, you know, when the dog or when the person is really getting closer, okay, within the point of touching the dog, you've got to be pushing harder than when you first started, but not too hard so it's hurting the dog. So this is where you got to work it out, okay? But the dog, understand, the dog's holding level of power, they're going to try to buffer them. And this is where dogs will take the pain, not saying it's painful, but they'll take it if they're holding a certain level of power. So this is when you're going to kind of work it out to know, perhaps, you have to work this in stages so the person, the initial goal perhaps isn't for the person to touch the dog at the first day, okay? It's going to just happen in increments in so many feet, because as you do this technique, okay, you have to look at how the dog's responding. Is it grabbing hold of mine? Is the dog looking up at you? Because you'll see the back and forth, you know, chaos going on, but the whole point is coming through you. Okay, this is where you're becoming less objectified. It's taking the level of being objectified down. Okay, now how that plays out physically is the head turns in, and it's like a line coming through the dog owner. Okay, but this is the other important thing. As you're pushing and pulling, I didn't mention this before, do not pulsate. Okay, don't just push and then let up and then push again. That's not what the technique is. It's like an elastic band. It's constantly stretching, because you have to maintain hold. Okay, you have to maintain hold over the dog's mind. Okay, it's got to maintain hold over the dog's mind. So when you're pushing, you've got to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. It's got to take hold, stay hold. Okay, it's got to maintain hold of the mind until that moment, that point, after the contact has gone away, then I release it. Okay, so it's got to take hold, you got to maintain it. It's like an elastic band stretching, okay? So that's technique. That's something, you know, when you're doing this for people coming into the home, you're doing this for, you know, entryway points, okay, and that's where I talk about relational triggers, okay, where a dog will, associations will be created through doorways, so that's where the dog's getting the most empowerment from. They want to hang around those areas, so you have to bring that dog back, push that dog back, not aggressively, but you're reclaiming those areas, and you're using the push and pull technique. Okay, you have to use it enough, consistently enough, so it starts to take hold of the dog's mind. Okay, because eventually, when you do it enough, consistent enough, it impacts the dog's decision-making process, and then you don't have to do the technique anymore. Okay, because then someone will come in, the dog will be sitting there as a follower to you, just kind of looking at the person and looking at you, you know, because they look for permission now, okay, because I own, or you own that person, okay, but this is how the technique, this is a very, very effective technique, okay, for stopping jumping behavior, for people coming into the home, but you have to set it up so if you're using a crate, and say if you have a spouse or a helper with you, that person, one person could be answering the door while you're down, say, in the hallway area, because when you start this technique, the dog, because you're interrupting, you know, you're changing the script, the dog's going to want to really desperately go out. You're going to really try to pull on that leash. You want to start the technique, say, down the hallway. All the dog, you just have to open, all we're doing is opening the dog's mind just a little bit, and then you have to just, don't worry about them. Focus on the technique, push and pull. Okay, so the first day you may not even make it all the way down the hallway, okay, but over time, okay, you'll get to that level where you can have the dog sitting there off leash and that dog isn't going to invade that person's space or jump on people. But the push-pull technique, that's the way to get it going. It's a great technique. It's just a matter of working on it, okay, then incorporating the leash flexing technique with it. But when you're doing it on, say, your walk too, you're doing it randomly. So that's the thing, the push-pull technique. Music comes off and I'm putting the dog into the sit, then I'll follow up with that technique to cut through the dog's mind, and then I'll transition or go into the leash flexing. But if I'm doing the watches occasionally, the dog's going to sit anyway. Even if I'm sitting talking to somebody, I'll randomly, every, say, it could be 30 seconds, I'll apply the push-pull technique just to create that extra wow factor, okay? It's going to help impact the overall decision-making process of the dog, okay? So you want to add that in for every, so many leash flexes, could be 30 or 20, I'm going to do the push and pull as an extra, kind of like a period at the end of a sentence, okay? I'm going to add that in, and that helps to really move things along. It helps with the role-changing process. So, again, you know, use the technique, get familiar with it, get comfortable with it. You know, understand the dogs, depending on the level of challenge, okay, you have to kind of be aware of these techniques, how they're applied, okay, because you don't want the dog's holding a lot of power. You want the leash to do most of your work for just a little leash flex and keep that away from you first, because you don't want to get your hand down there on the dog's back. That way the dog's really offering up a lot of challenge, because, you know, you could get bit, okay, so you want to bring your hand down and apply that technique when you're starting to get some roll change taking hold. So you have to know your dog. You got to understand the level of challenge, where you're standing in nature, and then just apply these techniques within that context. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.